Welcome back to Beyond the Comet podcast. I'm Mohammed and I'm here with Cody.
How's it going?
And today we're going to be getting into a really fun topic about space and figuring out what we do in the future with space. So, Cody, if we ruin this planet, which we seem very on track to do, not personally, but humanity in general, where do we go from here? What are our options?
Not personally, are you sure? You recycling?
I recycle, I
Yeah,
compost,
you
I do
do?
it all.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know where that recycling's going?
I don't want to talk
Do you
about
do you
that.
track? Because and I know this might not be perfectly on subject, but there was somebody that threw something away and they tracked it and it did not end up where they thought it was gonna
Yeah.
end up.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
that.
it
It's
did not
kind
get
of
recycled. So
it's
I'm
kind
sure
of
we're all destroying the planet.
right, right. Well, with that in mind, we obviously I think the first effort is to try to do our best to keep this planet functioning in a good way. But in case it doesn't, or in future generations, if they can't keep it in working order, I think people are already looking to other planets and other solutions outside of Earth.
Yeah, you mean good old Elon Musk, the
Yeah,
Musker.
among
Yeah.
others. Yeah, for
No,
sure.
he's the one in front of the charge to get onto Mars. Um, it's an interesting idea, and when you hear him speak, he always just uses it as like we need a secondary colonization in order to secure the human race for future um catastrophes. Because
Mhm.
let's say there something went wrong, or I mean, even if it wasn't our fault, even if like a meteor, because I mean, there are we're tracking as many meteors as we can, but it's possible that a meteor could hit. And the point is what do we even do in that case? Like if one is going to possibly intersect with Earth's orbit, what are
Right.
we even supposed to do? Like there's not really a plan to take care of that. I mean, there are plans, there's ideas, but we've never tested it. This is very much like the Armageddon
Yeah, I was gonna say.
scenario.
That wasn't a documentary?
No, yeah,
Oh, okay.
maybe it'll be. I don't know. It's seeming pretty close to what we're going to be talking about today.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, it's a good idea. It's just, I think it's further off. And then I remember there was like some sort of survey where people were asked who would even want to live on Mars, because I can't imagine it being a good experience. I don't even know if psychologically humans could handle living on Mars.
Yeah.
Um,
I gave this some thought because there is the aspect it depends on the motivation, I would say. Because I think there's always going to be something in most people, and especially some people, where they just have that craving to explore and to be the first somewhere else. It's why, people go to Antarctica, people climbed Everest for the first time, just to do it first, to see what it's like somewhere else. I think you're always going to have that element. But you're right. If you're leaving Earth because it's a flaming wreck, there's a different motivation. You're going to miss everything on Earth. You're going to miss common things that we get used to here that don't exist on Mars.
but it's not. See, that's the thing. It's not because it's a flaming wreck. You have to do it before that. You have to,
Yeah.
because you have to create a colony as insurance so that the human race doesn't fully get destroyed, and hopefully after whatever catastrophe happens, we can come back to Earth and try to reclaim it. And it's just one. It's a long trip. It's a really
Right.
long trip to get. I mean, I don't know at the speeds at which we're traveling right now. I know there's a lot of research into new types of engines and different technologies to try to increase the speed at which we can travel through space. But right now, I mean, you're talking years of traveling, if
Oh,
that. I
right.
mean, probably
Yeah.
like a decade. I mean, not a decade. I don't know. I don't
No,
know
the
the exact
times,
numbers.
the numbers are mind boggling. I looked at some of these and I actually linked the article under the video. But even light, which by definition is the fastest thing in the universe that we know of, um, for example, the time it takes light to get from the sun to Earth, traveling at the speed of light, is 8 minutes. To
Yeah.
get to Jupiter, it's 50 minutes just to get there and then back, depending on the position of the sun, or where we are in orbit. But that's at the speed of light, which we cannot travel at that speed. So at the speeds we're talking about, yeah, you're talking about years, and for distant planets, it could be, entire lifetimes or multiple lifetimes to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does call into question, you know, how do we even conceive of which planet to go to at this point? It might be so far off that it's hard for us to perceive.
Well, I mean, and just to come back to, I totally agree that it's for the Kepler, or not the Alpha Centauris, or the
Mhm,
these. I don't know all the names. I've lost
mhm,
track of them. I used to care
mhm.
about all of these Earth, or the Goldilocks zone planets,
Right,
where they're
right.
like perfectly suitable, but we don't even know what's on them. I mean, like the
Mhm.
way that we are even, um, one, you can figure it out by where it is in the in their own galaxy, but to see if it could be habitable, and then you can use like ways that the light, that you could look at the
Right.
light, to see like what kind of gases are coming off of it, what and get a little bit better picture to see what it's composed of.
Mhm.
But still, like, we don't know if there's life there. We don't really know if, so you could, I mean, if we were to just send somebody to these far distant planets right now, it's a shot in the dark from the knowledge that we have,
Yeah.
to even know, because it just takes one thing to make it not suitable for
Right.
humans to live on. I mean, especially, like, can we even eat the food? Like, if
Yeah.
it does have life, can we even, like, does that even coexist with us? I mean, our whole ecosystem was created around, we were created around our ecosystem.
Mhm.
So there's a really small chance that it'll all work out great.
Right. I view it as almost like you're looking at a zoomed out satellite map of, like, an entire state, and you're looking at individual houses at that scale and thinking, "Oh, this one looks okay. I can live in that," without knowing at all what's inside the house, what are the conditions, whether it has rooms at all, whether it's, got major issues, and I think honestly that's less information than we have about some of these planets. And
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, we're always gaining a lot more, and so, I mean, so hopefully we'll be able to understand more what's going on these planets, so we can
Right.
hopefully target them. But again, then the distance, as you said, is just outrageous. And
Mhm.
so I think that what people are focusing on right now are near planets. And I
Mhm.
just, so, like, here's, and I know this is from my favorite science fiction show, but like, even in Star Trek, you know they had the holodeck. Like, they would have all
Mhm.
gone insane. They had this, like, they had
But you
to
should
create.
describe because I don't know
Okay,
everyone's
so the
really gonna
holodeck is just basically a matter reorganization box. So it's able to move matter into any form that it wants to. I mean, so that it basically, you can create rooms and scenarios that are real. So, like, you can
it's like a
create.
simulator,
Yeah,
a
it's like a
full-scale
simulator, but
simulator.
but
Mhm.
with matter. It's like, the idea is, if you can uh, manipulate the position of every atom, then you
Mhm.
could create anything.
Mhm.
So, and this is a lot. This is a big thing in that show. I know
Mhm.
it's science fiction, but what I'm saying is, even in their writing, they realize that to be on a spaceship for how long they're going to be, you'd go insane. So, like, I don't
Yeah.
like living on Mars would. I just don't think it's plausible. I mean, you even go insane if you get into a sound deprivation chamber on
Mhm.
Earth for too long. Like, it
Yeah.
drives you crazy. And
But
space
to
has no
me
sound, and there's no atmosphere on. I mean, I don't think so. Yeah, there's no atmosphere on Mars, so it's like, I can't imagine there being much sound being able to travel. I don't know in the
yeah,
bubbles, like, how
so
the
these
bubbles work.
problems, I completely agree. Those are definite problems, and I think those are things that have to be considered. I mean, not to mention, like, what happens to your bones and your internal organs
Yes, at low
in all
gravities.
those
Yeah,
situations, even if it's
true.
simulated gravity, all that stuff, there's not enough testing clearly to tell if it's safe for even living for a couple years and then lifetimes and kids being born there, all of that. But it's just, I feel like some of the problems you're talking about in terms of sound and keeping people engaged, those are achievable. Unlike talking about traveling at light speed, I see that. I see the ability to connect to a planet and to say, okay, it's not Earth and it's not what I'm used to, but people being able to adapt and say, okay, there's some benefits to living on Mars or there's opportunity. And that leads to, it's going to be necessary, I think, to colonize other planets where we have to learn how to exploit in terms of getting resources from these planets. And I think that's the first step, even before we even think about colonization.
Yeah, no, I agree. The exploitation will be interesting, but I do want to say one more thing about
Hmm.
the exploration part of this, because I do feel, and actually this will travel over into us exploiting the surrounding space, but it feels like everything that's going on right now is a marketing ploy. Like
Mm.
I honestly think that, and I can't imagine. I mean, we're sitting here talking about this, but I can't imagine Elon Musk doesn't have these considerations as well, but he is still using it as something like, oh, we need to move in this direction. And by creating a pursuit that people can get behind that's interesting, it does create funding and money and
Hmm.
it's like this exciting thing of space. And like to
Oh yeah.
use this exciting thing of space is, even though like even us two podcasters can do a little research and realize that it's not feasible.
Right.
Um, it just gets people excited, and I
Hmm.
think that that's what's going on in a lot of what we're going to talk about today is just people getting really excited about things that are a lot harder when you look into the actual concept.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like things like what will actually get us to Mars is like terraforming and like, but we don't even know how to do that. So
Hmm.
there's all this element that I think this is a lot further off.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. It's marketing, but at the same time, like some of the marketing is purposeful. It's like having cute animals at the zoo gets people in there and they're excited about the cute animals. Then they start learning about the ones that maybe aren't as cute, and then they want to protect animals in general. So the mission, the kind of the marketing justifies the mission in the same way getting people excited about playing golf on Mars, even though that's so far off in the future. It maybe gets funding so that you can work on communication systems and the boring infrastructure that will help us in the more short term.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just and hopefully we will get to the point where, the funding will create some, and it already is. I mean, we're seeing some
Mhm.
crazy stuff that's happening in space. The what is it? The Webb telescope. What is it?
James Webb, I
James
think.
Webb. Sorry,
Yeah.
couldn't think of the first thing. So the
Mhm.
James Webb telescope and all the new discoveries that are happening about the creation of the universe and like and
Mhm.
that's so amazing. Like it's great
Right.
that was being, we're getting all this new understanding about the world that we live in.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just funny. It's and when we get into the next subject matter, which is space mining, it's like
Mhm.
you can really see where the marketing portion of this happened.
Mhm.
Because space mining has, and I swear to it, I think it's Armageddon. I tried to track it, I couldn't quite, because Armageddon came in 2012, or 20, was it 28 or
I
12?
feel like it was earlier. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 1998. That's why
Yeah.
I knew there was an 8. So
Yeah.
1998 was,
Mhm.
Armageddon.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's kinda showed, like, there was this, like, all these companies started, like, as I researched, just right around that time, like, a little later,
Huh.
2012, 2011, it's, like, right around there, you got all these companies that said,
Right.
"Hey, we're gonna get into," because a big portion of that movie was, Bruce Willis mining on the asteroid.
Mhm.
Or not but trying to destroy the asteroid by going on it, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it was a big portion. So, and he was, I think, wasn't he yeah,
He
he
was
was
originally a miner. Yeah.
he was an
Yeah,
oil
yeah.
rigger
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
sea, oil rigger,
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever you call that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's like it's how it's tracked. It's like, and then a bunch of people saw, oh, this is a great idea. Let's get into space. Let's start mining these things. Let's start, getting all these materials, from these asteroids.
Mhm.
And then this article, like I found this article that came out, and this is when it like really started to explode. But this art, like 2019, I remember reading this article, and it
Mhm.
was about asteroid mining, and it was specifically about an asteroid that was circling Jupiter. And this
Mhm.
asteroid was, apparently it's filled with iron and nickel.
Mhm.
And it says that if we were to extract all the iron and nickel from this asteroid, it would equate to 10 quintillion dollars. And then
Wow.
it said and then the whole article is basically explaining like how big 10 quintillion, jeez Louise, quintillion,
Yeah.
a word that hopefully will never become commonplace.
Right.
But it definitely will someday.
Mhm.
And then it just goes on to say how if this was brought back, the economy would crash. You know,
Yeah.
the metals would just go down to zero because the market would be flooded.
Yeah.
Um, and then all these companies started to say, hey, we're going to go out there and do it, and they had,
Right.
when I tracked them back, they all started around like 2013, 2012, so right after like Armageddon. And now
Right.
and the funny thing is all of them promised to be mining by 2023, which is this year.
Interesting.
All of
And
them. There are three
I have
companies
yeah.
in concert with NASA saying that they were going to send up probes to kind of check out this far distant Jupiter meteor.
Right.
But they are trying to do near asteroids. Uh, oh yeah, so that's an asteroid, the Jupiter asteroid.
Mhm.
But they're going to start to try to mine near asteroids, and these near these near asteroids. So all of them failed. Well,
Yeah.
there's one that's still trying and still has a promise of going up. It's Astro Forge, which is
Mhm.
supposed to start their mining process, or at least sending out uh, probes to figure out mining situations this year. But most
Mhm.
of them, went under.
Mhm.
There was Planetary Resources, which went under. There's this Deep Space Industries, which went under.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's expensive to send anything into space. Like,
well,
even a 1 pound of material, if you want to send into space, it's millions of dollars.
oh yeah,
Like,
and it's not
there's
even
no
that. It's
cheap
like,
way. Yeah.
you need so many things to work out. Like you can't send humans out there because it's just not uh, it's not reliable, and it's there's too many issues, and the distance might be too far.
Mhm.
So it has to be a lot of automation, and then you also have to set up the rig, like planetary resources. Sorry,
Mhm.
planetary resources. They were going to mine asteroids to take out the oxygen and nitrogen, I believe, and then
Mhm.
create fuel for ships. So
Oh, I
like,
see.
and they were going to have basically uh, an outer space gas station.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Yeah.
to say it better than that,
Kinda like a
uh,
pit stop on the way so you don't have to go the
yeah,
whole
so
way
something
alone.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
big dreams.
Mhm.
Um, but they never got anywhere.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
they
it's
just made a
mind
bunch of.
bog the
Oh, go ahead.
complexity is mind-boggling because you even the communication, like, when they landed on the moon, there was, like, a 2-second delay from when they said something when it came back, or
Yeah,
1.5-second delay, so it just adds up, and the moon is, like, 200 something thousand miles away. We're
yeah,
talking about millions, in some cases, miles away, or maybe not. Well, we're talking about distances at which even our most advanced communications can't keep up with. If you're trying to tell a robot, okay, dig here, adjust this, and something changes, you're working on delays that just are unsustainable when you're trying to operate fine machinery.
yeah. And this is like the best use case. Like I
Hmm.
started this researching like artificial intelligence and large language models and all this stuff, like our
Hmm.
normal go to. But this is like the best use of AI is in trying to reduce the amount of human interaction that needs to take
Mm.
place with these, the rover or whatever automated machinery is going to be, exploring. And this is really the way I think it's going to move forward
Hmm.
in the future for just the reasons you said.
Yeah, I
It's
really
just
want
too
to.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to get to the topic of how you mentioned if the copper from this one asteroid, copper and nickel from this one asteroid came in, because that really changes everything we've known as human beings. Because everything about Earth, everything about survival is limited resources. And we're kind of competing for those limited resources or working out systems and talking to each other, trading with each other because there are limited resources. And I'm not saying every resource is out on an asteroid, but certainly a lot of the ones that people are fighting over and people we definitely need for technology are available on other planets and on these asteroids. And it really comes down to who's going to get it, who's going to control it, and how are they going to implement it.
Yeah, it's like a gold rush. It's
Yeah.
like it's the planetary gold rush,
Hmm.
and it's gonna be so interesting. And, it's funny because I don't know if those, because the reason that any material is valued, I mean, other than like diamonds and gold and things that I think, I mean, they still have I wouldn't say they have a purpose. I mean, I think they're valued because of the amount of, jewelry and stuff that, it's for a different reason. But a lot of materials that we're using in computing,
Mhm.
and we need these materials to kind of advance our society. They become these really sought after, rare materials. But
Yeah.
the problem in that is because they're rare, we're finding other routes. Oops, we're finding other routes to try to get away from them so that we don't like I keep reading articles constantly where we are shifting to more basic materials to try to do the same
Mhm.
thing because these rare materials are driving up cost, and then it becomes a supply and demand.
Right.
If you can reduce cost by using something else, so it's like we're gonna people are going to be going out and trying to get all these like rare, you know, metals, and we're going to be like, that's whatever. We just use what we can. We already
Yeah.
figured out how to use carbon or something
Right.
because
It's
it's
kind of like
everywhere.
it's like an extrapolation of the issue in some science fiction movies where they travel millions of miles away to fix a problem that's on Earth, but by the time they get back, it's already solved or they've moved on to something else.
Yeah,
Just that time delay is significant, and the needs. You're talking about these companies started in 1998 or around that time period. If the planning for that started and they still haven't gotten something during that period of time, we could have just moved away from the mineral that they were targeting on one asteroid, and then all of a sudden they have to change all their plans. So
yeah.
yeah, you can see why people will be interested. You can see why there's so much funding going to it, but it it's I don't know. I just don't think it's a easy problem to solve quickly, and that's creating even more problems because of it.
Well, even if they go out and they achieve their goal and they start to bring back materials, that they can, sell and make money off of, they're going to have to do exactly what diamonds do, and they're going to have to regulate the amount that goes into the economy to
Yeah.
try to keep the prices up. Otherwise, exactly what this article says, they're going to have, you know, 10. Well, I didn't have the amount, but it's going to definitely not be $10 quadrillion anymore because
Yeah.
the value is just going to plummet and they're going to have nothing.
Yeah. Well, you're assuming if one person, like let's say company A goes and gets all the copper from this one asteroid, if they control it all, yeah, sure, they're going to be gradually giving it out to keep the prices high. But if there's an incentive for another company to go out there and sell it for a dollar less just to get that advantage. So you're hoping that there's competition. But going back to your analogy about the gold rush, it's going to be the Wild West because who's regulating this? You know, Once you leave the Earth's orbit, who's regulating anything? And if it's private entities, if it's other governments, who can keep anyone from grabbing what they can grab?
And I do, yeah, I agree with you. And I think that through advancements in technology, the capability to get something into space, maybe not you, but an
Hmm.
automated element, like all you have to do is figure out, and there are examples of this where companies have gotten things into space, for very cheap that aren't necessarily, you don't have to spend the billions of dollars to launch a rocket. You can
Yeah.
just to show proof of concept, we can get something. Anybody can get something into space. I
Hmm.
think, and that is going to be, especially with the capabilities of automation. If anybody can get like a little mining drone that just
Hmm.
because once you're, I really don't know the requirements for this, but I would imagine that, if you could just get slight propulsion, you might not get there fast, but once you're out of the gravitational pull of the Earth, you can, you just kind of need to set it on its way, and then it needs to recognize that it's there. So you're going to have a lot of slow moving objects going towards these asteroids,
Right.
possibly. I mean, this
Yeah.
is all just hypothetical. I have no idea, but
Well, that's the future, right? We don't have an idea. We're just making our
yeah,
best guesses, but it's the trends are definitely there. I mean, you think about even 10 years ago, if people told you, yeah, there's going to be a kid can go to a store, pick up a drone, fly it around and, snoop on the government or like fly it over people's houses and look in their backyards and stuff. I wouldn't really have believed that, how easy it is now. And
yeah.
I could definitely see rocket technology getting to that point where you could go to a local store, get a rocket, get it out into low Earth orbit, and maybe longer if you have the ability to, and then you're in space,
Yeah.
technically in space, and then you're kind of unlimited in what you can do from there. So I
Yeah.
think it's something we do have to think about. And do we really want this many people having the ability to send stuff up into orbit and cluttering up, legitimate uses?
I mean, do we want one person?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's always that Goldilocks zone, as you said, in the middle where there's enough competition, but it's not just a few people or a few companies controlling everything. But yeah, Wild Wests kind of have to happen in technology until we figure out, okay, we need some regulation.
Yeah, I think my favorite new rocket technology is they basically made a giant centrifuge, which is just
Mm.
a thing that spins really, really fast.
Yeah, yeah.
In medical, to mix up uh, test tubes of things, to
Yeah, of
separate
course, separate.
things,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's my explanation. But they made a huge one and they turned it on its side, and then
Hmm.
there's like so basically it spins really really fast, and then there's this like little it like basically is a slingshot. So it's
Huh.
slingshot. So now it needs so the thing doesn't need any gas. It's all
Oh,
mechanically propulsed,
propelled.
propelled. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah. Hmm.
which is really cool. So it's like already we're saying, oh well, we found a way that doesn't need fuel to do
Right.
this. And like and as people have, I mean, there's been the attempt of not attempt, but idea of the space elevator, which never
Yeah.
really was feasible. But and just all these different technologies that might allow us to bridge that gap or have
Right.
so there are a lot of different ways we're going about it, which is really
Right.
cool.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
it, I think it's pretty certain we're going to get there at some point. Maybe not you and I, hopefully, but I tend to doubt you and I. But the idea is we're going to get there. Humanity at some point is going to get there to the point where it's pretty routine to get into space and to get distance away from Earth. The question I'm thinking about is what happens when eventually we meet other beings out there?
Yeah, and we may already have. Um, it's funny. I just looked it up today for this podcast,
Hmm.
and so that there's been all these sightings by military personnel, which has been pretty big with alien sightings.
Hmm.
Um, and it's all these like little discs that flying around, and I think one of the most interesting ones was they were able to lock on to this object that was
Hmm.
flying very low to the ocean, and I think it was a lock on with whatever jet that they were in. Uh,
Hmm.
their targeting system was able to lock onto it, and it shows it just consistently flying really low, and it's like this small little puck that's
Right.
flying really low. So a lot of these have come out, and this is military personnel. So as these come out, people listen, because they're trained. They're not just crackpots.
Right.
So now
And there's video footage,
there's
and
video footage and everything.
it's
Yes, exactly.
documented. And I think what's really stood out to me in some of the ones I've seen is, and why it's notable, is they don't obey the traditional laws of physics that we have and the limitations of aircraft, or even, not even today's technology, but even extrapolating 5, 10 years or 20, 100 years. It's things that we can't really perceive us doing. Like they're moving too quickly in one direction and then rapidly changing direction and just doing things that we can't really figure out how it's happening.
Yeah, no, agreed. And so much so that this made it to the Pentagon.
Hmm.
And they took on a task force to kind of go over all of these reports and figure them out. And of course, they've got an answer for everything. And even
Hmm.
today, like so basically they answered away most of them,
Hmm.
except for like a handful that they couldn't answer.
Hmm.
And most of them were like lens flares, or like the way that we were capturing the video, and ways that it was just altering the light,
Right.
to create these objects. So they were able to explain away most of them. So the
Hmm.
handful, and this is just today I read this article that came out like it's crazy, an hour before this
Hmm.
episode. They've now started to say that the handful is China. So they're
Oh,
blaming
interesting.
China for the rest of them. And
Huh.
it's just when you see these things, it's pretty amazing to think that you know that we created these things because the way
Yeah.
they're moving, and to tie this back into how we would get into space. If I imagined a way to be able to get into space, it would be like how this moves, and the traditional sci-fi UFO that can move through the air, without being hindered by gravity.
Right.
It almost is a anti-gravity machine, so that it doesn't need to propel at high speeds, which now has to punch through these different spheres or atmospheres that
Hmm.
are above us. And it needs a ton of fuel, all this stuff. But if you could just simply move at a slow pace into space,
Hmm.
that would be very beneficial.
Right.
And if I was an alien race, so like this whole thing was like, if I was an alien race
Hmm.
and I wanted to study just like we are Earth and everything we just talked about, I wanted to learn more about distant planets.
Hmm.
But they're really far away. So I'm not going to get on a ship and send it. I would make an automated
Right.
piece of technology that could fly through space and go observe.
Yep.
And it's funny that we're getting a lot of reports now, and I know there have been a lot in the past. UFOs have been a thing. They're actually now not called UFOs; they're called UAPs,
Hmm.
which is unexplained anomalous phenomena. Which is, of
That's a
course,
much broader.
well, I think it's boringer. So that, and it also, I
Yeah.
think they want to erase all the UFO, stuff that's tied to UFOs.
Yeah, that does make sense. And it's also they don't have to be flying. It's hovering is not technically flying, and I think it just catches more things in that definition.
Yeah, but
It's definitely not
UFOs,
as fun to say though.
yeah, it means aliens. I mean,
Yeah,
UFO means
yeah,
aliens are here.
yeah.
You know,
Well, I think
but
you bring up a really good point though. It's some of the science fiction movies focus on when the aliens themselves are here, and they're usually trying to do something bad to us. But it's very much it's much more likely that they're just sending out probes, not the probes that people talk about, but little drones that don't need fueling, can just go to distant planets and do research. It's very likely that that's happening, and I think we can perceive that because, like you said, we're doing the same thing. We're sending stuff to Mars, we're sending stuff to planets, asteroids, to find out what's going on there. Um, Knowing that's there, what do we how do we get organized to respond to that? Or do we even need to respond to that?
well, I can't imagine, with all of the technology that the all countries have right now, and the satellites that are observing everything, and I can't imagine they haven't caught one of these things. It's like,
Right.
what, especially if it's China, if it, it's like, if it's kind of mind-boggling, because I mean, there are so many things in space that are observing Earth. They're just looking down and
Right.
observing Earth, or just monitoring all wavelengths and everything that's going around Earth. And I think that they already know what they're doing. They're just trying to cover it up. So
Yeah.
it's just really, I don't know. And I don't think we'll ever hear about it, but
Yeah.
hopefully.
It's an interesting I know we're like, the AI aspect is not forefront with this, but I think it actually makes it easier to cover up at a certain point because in the extreme example, if you had a little green person talking to the camera and saying, "Hey, we're here from this planet and we're taking over," no one would believe it. Even today, I don't think you'd get much belief in that. And over time, with the having more fakes, making it easier to duplicate realistic things, I think it's gonna make it a lot harder for people to buy into real things if there truly was evidence of other species, other life forms, or their technology. I think it's going to be really difficult to convince people.
I don't know. I think it definitely comes to credibility, and we talked about this in a previous episode,
Hmm.
credible sources. And I think this is where we're going to probably head with trying to validate
Hmm.
information, because, yeah, you're right. You can definitely could make a lot of um, claims and then back them up with fake video, fake everything. But
Hmm.
the fact that this is coming from people that were,
Yeah.
stationed on, and flying around uh, aircraft carriers, it gives it a little bit of credibility, I think. And
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just so many sightings. It's like if you look into it, there's just been so many sightings of this kind. And the funny thing is, there's just been so many sightings, non-military, that have been washed away. But now that they're actually part of people in service, they're being
Mhm.
listened to.
Yeah.
And the excuses that the Pentagon is coming up with just aren't going to cut it. I don't think that people are going to stop thinking that the case is that we are being observed in some way.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. But it's interesting because it's not like extraterrestrial or UAPs are coming specifically for the United States. So that's one thing that makes me lean against there being. I do think there's some sort of, given the size of the universe, that there's some sort of interaction from other life forms, but I tend to doubt that there's some sort of organized cover up between all the governments on the planet.
Oh no, I think there's probably individual cover-ups.
Mhm.
I think that the only thing you can do is cover it up, um, because it's the acquisition of new technology. I mean, if you're able to capture one of these things, or I don't know, I don't see there any real government going out there and being like, it's aliens. Although I don't really know what the impact of that would be. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Because
So
how would what do you think people, obviously there's the military aspect and wanting to have an advantage over other governments if you have that technology and they don't. But from a general population perspective, what would be the impact? Like if you or I heard about it, I'm I kind of could guess our reactions, but most people when they hear about it, I wonder what they would how they would react.
I would imagine though, like you would need proof, and then I think that if we decided they were aliens, how do they know that? Have they caught one of these things? What's the technology that was
Mhm.
used in these alien devices? How is that benefiting the rest of the world? Like
Right.
how are we integrating all that into our society? Are we
Yeah.
like, what does this mean? Are we being under attack?
Right.
There's just,
I
I
think
mean, there's
I
a
think
lot we
it's
don't
gonna be
know.
fear, first of all, because it's like you said, it's a lot we don't know. I think it's instantly fear, and people don't like being watched. And if you're getting watched as humanity by a force you don't know, I think it's pretty terrifying without
Yeah.
knowing what their intentions are. And I mean, let's be realistic. People are influenced by Hollywood and the movies and TV shows they see. There's not many where the aliens come down and give us hugs and free candy. It's typically negative, and I think it's also kind of an element of human beings. When we go somewhere, we're trying to extract or exploit stuff from the planet, and so we assume that anyone coming here would try to do the same thing.
No, I totally agree. And a lot of that imagination comes with lack of information, which I can only imagine if they, and this is all just supposition or whatever. Is that, I think that's the
Hmm.
right word.
Yeah.
But is that if they have captured one of these things, the first thing that they're going to do is try to take it apart. It's going to be a
Hmm.
foreign technology that is probably nothing like our technology. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to figure out how it works, which is going to be very difficult. Even if they figure out how it works, they're gonna it's going to be in all different languages. Like if they can download the code, if they even use code, like
Right.
it won't integrate to anything that we have. So like to test it, it may not even use electricity. Maybe it's
Yeah.
light based or
Yeah. This.
molecule based, or who knows what kind of technology is allowing them to move in this way.
Right.
So it's
I
that
think
lack
of
of.
it almost like a kid opening a gift on Christmas, like a really young kid, and they open it up and they take out the thing, and then they play with the box because they don't know what the point of the gift was. Like, we
Yeah,
may be looking at the wrapper or the battery for the technology, thinking that's the technology. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
our perception of this is can be so off. It brings to mind, and we talked a little bit about this off podcast, but we were saying the Pioneer plaque, which is a kind of a engraved metal plaque with, it's like a, they wanted to, if it was received by a alien uh, being, it would show humanity, and it's simplified in this very basic pictorial with like a generic white man and a white woman, and like basic hydrogen atoms and just very simple things listed there. Um, but it brings to mind, how do you express an entire civilization in one page, and how do you even expect someone on Earth to know what you're talking about, and then someone on another planet who may have a way of communicating and perceiving reality that's completely different than ours.
Yeah, no, it makes me think of, in a lot of sci-fi, the way that we, show our intelligence is by somehow communicating pi. Like, that's
Right.
always the thing. It's always pi. It's
Interesting.
like, "Oh, we understand the circumference of a circle," or the way that yes, it's, but yeah, it's, I don't know, and, like, there's gonna be a mismatch of communication. I think
Mhm.
that's the best, and I do agree with, like, using mathematics and science to, because you gotta figure that they're probably utilizing, um, the same materials that we are. Those are universal, the
To our
materials on the,
knowledge.
well, yeah, but maybe not knowledge, but at least understanding of what, because those are, the materials on the periodic table. Most they're birthed in supernovas and stars. Stars
Yeah,
become the factories. So like they still have, as far as we can see,
right.
stars still are the same stars that
That's
are
true.
close to us.
That's true.
So it's like, okay, well, hopefully we can grab onto these universal truths.
Right. And, like,
Um,
light and other, physics related terms, they're as far as we know, they're constant in the universe, and that's as elemental as we can get, and so if
yeah.
we can express that, if we can use that to communicate, I think that's our best shot.
I think what we're communicating is we're human beings. We're intelligent things.
Mhm.
um, you know, because they might not even know that, because the disconnect, and maybe once they realize, oh, there are intelligent things that sent us this thing, maybe we should go see where they are, and maybe
Right.
that's what's happening. Maybe I don't know where that was. Where was the plaque sent?
I I'll have to look that up. Maybe I'll link the,
I'm sure it was on some
plaque
sort
itself.
of
It was on
distant.
a I know the mission was the Pioneer mission. It was
Okay,
in the '70s. I think it was to Saturn, but I'm not positive.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting.
Mhm.
But getting back to like it's not so much that we can't figure out the basic understandings together, that it's just the way it's used. It's the creation of how you use chemistry, how you use, because their technology would advance in a completely different way than ours.
Mhm.
We're really, there are different ways that we could have gone, and there is actually a computer that has been constructed that runs off of light.
Mm.
There are computers that are mechanical, purely mechanical.
Right.
So I mean, these are like kind of the first computers, and they work just by a mechanic. Like there's no, you like crank the thing and it'll solve the problem.
Mhm.
So there's definitely a lot of different types of ways to create intelligent objects,
Yeah.
or synthetic objects. So I don't know. I mean, the interesting part is if they are automated, then at least that's shared. This idea of an automated thing. This technology
Yeah.
of creating intelligence that's beyond. It becomes, maybe that's a universal discovery.
Right. Or it's again, there's what I love about space and thinking about different alien races is just there's so many potential possibilities. For example, we send out the rover to Mars and some advanced version of that to some other planet. At a certain point, if our technology is advanced enough and relative to another alien species, it could be perceived as life for that alien species. They could see the rover or the group of drones that we send as life. And if we struggle on at a certain point, we're going to be struggling with, is this life? Is this a robot? Does it have, thought? Does it have emotions? All that. If we're struggling with that, easily another alien race could struggle with that too.
Yeah. There's a short story that I remember reading when I was in high school, and it's all about aliens coming to planet Earth, and then they think the cars are the beings, and that
Yeah.
like us, it's really interesting because like the way they look at it, and they describe how we are just like these things that come out of the cars, but the cars are the actual living creatures on the planet.
Yeah.
And it is true, it's hard to know how anything will be perceived from any viewpoint
Hmm.
other than our own.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for the future and just getting stuff out there. And I think, there's the escape Earth concept, but what motivates me more, what gets me more excited is just there's so much to learn out there. There's so much that we can learn to a live better lives on the planet and to do the best we can with the planet that we already have. I think there's information that we can get through a lot of these efforts that hopefully can be translated back to this nice planet that we're already on.
Yeah, it kind of just reminds me of like how an individual deals. I always think of the planetary problems as if the all people collected are just one individual. You
Mm,
know, and when you have a choice, right, to either run from a problem,
mhm,
and find something external. You can you change cities or whatever, but or you can deal with it and try to correct it. And I think that this kind of mirrors that a little bit, where it's like we can either colonize a different planet or try to fix our own.
right.
And I think fixing our own will be the best. Making sure that we can live in harmony. Of course, overpopulation. I don't know how that's solved, but
Mhm,
we do need to harmonize with the planet more, which I think we're finding. Hopefully we're moving in that direction.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely more to talk about and a whole future to discuss it. So I think we've done a good job so far, at
Cool.
least starting the conversation.
All right.
So again, thanks for watching and listening to our podcast, and please let us know if you have any comments or questions, and we'd love to answer them. So we will see you next week with another fun topic about the future. Thanks, and see you then.
Good day.